Hey, how's it going? And today we're going to be taking a look at Lumen, an Unreal Engine. This is one of those things that I meant to explore a lot more in depth. But today we're in a first person template and we're just going to explore what Lumen is and how good is it and should you use it and what's involved with using it. It's actually replaced what they formerly knew as surface space ambient inclusion. And you can think of Lumen as basically indirect lighting or global illumination. And so for this to enable it, all we have to do is just go in here and search for Lumen, and you'll see that it comes enabled by default. And so there's really nothing that we have to do there, and the detail tracing is the default setting, and so everything's fine there. There's nothing to enable there. And then it's also enabled for the outdoor light as well, for the direct light. The atmosphere sunlight has to be enabled, and the skylight has to be set to real-time capture, and both of those are done already. But to really enable Lumen, we need to go into the post-process volume, and we can just search for Lumen. And then you can see down here that it's not enabled, so we need to enable it. So we just check that box. And then down here, there's some quality settings, and these can also be set by way of console variables, but we can just jack these up all the way, especially if it's going to be a high quality game or you really wanted to get the best possible. And then we need to enable it for reflection. So Lumen handles basically global illumination and reflections, and direct lighting is also something, but I guess that's not really necessarily handled by Lumen. But Lumen is specifically for indirect or bounced lighting, which in the majority of cases. Now there's this website here that I'd encourage you to go to, and this gentleman does a really nice job of talking about the difference between Lumen versus ray tracing. And it's really interesting because Lumen really is a form of ray tracing. It's not separate from ray tracing, but it's considered software ray tracing. He has this example here, and honestly, if you didn't know which was which, it would be hard to find fault with either scene. So this scene right here is in Lumen, and to be honest with you, if I hadn't seen the other scene, I would think this is perfectly fine. I don't see anything. Now this scene seems to have a lot more contrast to the scene on the right, which is ray tracing or global. Yeah, it's global lumen ray tracing, and you can see I don't know what you would want to call it, but it's like specular highlights. It has a lot more specular highlights. The colors seem a little deeper and richer, but honestly, it just depends on what you're trying to do. Here, he's into photorealistic architectural visualization, so for him, these subtle kind of details really matter. But like in a game or a virtual environment, or depending on what you're doing, it's not that bad a deal. So where he finds the most problem is dealing with reflections. So I guess the takeaway from this is that if your scene does have a lot of reflections, then you probably want to enable ray tracing, hardware ray tracing, versus using Lumen, which I mentioned is software ray tracing. But in Unreal Engine has the flexibility to use hardware ray tracing if it's available, so it will default, although I don't believe it renders as quickly and as smoothly as Lumen does. So here he has issues with the reflections of reflections. And so how often is that an issue in a scene? Honestly, I don't think that occurs that much, and might occur more in a vampire movie or where you have a lot of close-up camera somewhere near reflective surfaces. So there are issues. I can see scenes where that might be an issue, but for the most part, I don't think it is. So anyway, let's go back into Unreal Engine and take a closer look at this. So I want to create a kind of a indoor scene here to really show you what Lumen does and how well it lights a scene. So I'm just going to grab a wall here and hit Alt and drag, click and drag, and I'm just going to kind of turn it and make a kind of a little roof so I can make a kind of dark area here. And I'm just hitting Alt and dragging, and this is such a great shortcut in Unreal Engine because there's so many times where you have to duplicate some sort of asset, and it just makes it so easy to do. So now if we come back down here, I think I can go over place actor, and we're going to go ahead and get a sphere. And maybe I'll get another one. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Not this guy capture. I need to delete that. Sorry about that. And I'll get another sphere. And let me just put these up here. And let me clear out my search bar so I'm not filtering results. And what we can do is I'll just clear those surfaces off of there. And so we'll be playing around with some spheres here. Some of them I'll put a reflective surface on, and some I'll make luminous so that we can see. We'll use an emissive material. So in our project settings now, well, let's not enable hardware ray tracing right now. Let's just go ahead and create a material real fast. So the material I'd like to create is just an emissive material. Unreal calls it emissive color, but you can also think of it as luminosity. So here you just press 3 and click, and it gives you a color vector, and then we can just make it red and plug it into emissive, and then we have this nice glowing sphere. But if that's not glowing enough, we can actually hit M and click and add a multiplier, and then we can really make this thing start glowing. So we can try a 5. I don't know. Let's just go 10 on that, and so we have this really luminous sphere that we can use to create some indirect bounce lighting and see what it looks like. So I can just drag this onto the sphere now as this material, and there we've got this nice glowing sphere. And then we can try to come down here and navigate into this darker area and see what it looks like. Now, I think I already enabled Lumen with the post-process volume, so we should be good to go to just take a look at this. One nifty shortcut key is Control, Shift, and drag. And when you do that, you can actually move the camera along with the object that you're dragging. So that's Control, Shift, and drag. It's a really underrated shortcut. So there we go. That's Lumen lighting a scene, and for a game or whatever, it looks great. And in this particular scene, there's no reflective surfaces, so there's really no need for hardware retracing here. The software ray tracing solution in Unreal, the Lumen system, is just fine. It looks great. And like I said, I don't think most scenes are heavily reflective. And if there are, I don't know. I don't know that you'd need to enable hardware retracing. Like I said, just in case, you did have a lot of reflective surfaces. Now, there's a lot going on under the hood. There's a whole section Unreal has on documentation about Lumen, and for outdoor lighting, we want to make sure, like I said, there's other settings. But let's go ahead and create some reflective surfaces now and take a look at how Lumen handles reflections, or maybe I should say how that doesn't handle reflections. So this is really interesting to me. So this is not a complete mirror surface. This is just a burnished metal. So we'll put that on there, and you can see it's reflecting our sky. And I'll go ahead and I'll delete that sphere, and on this one I'll just kind of duplicate it so we have something to look at. So here we get into a situation where we might want to look at enabling hardware retracing. I'm going to go ahead and make these a little bit bigger, and then we can go ahead and duplicate this. So we have 2 spheres, and now we're in a reflection situation, which again, how common is that? I don't know. So we're in the game right now, and we're just looking. So I do see the sphere reflecting. So the spheres are reflecting. How well they're reflecting. There does seem to be some wonkiness there. So the one thing I notice is I don't see the first person player character at all, which is just a pair of arms. The first person character is just a pair of arms. But you notice we don't even see those arms. So Lumen doesn't work with meshes, reflecting skin meshes. So that's kind of an issue. And so there is that to consider. But there's definitely some wonkiness there in terms of the reflections. it seems like it's more than just shadows going out. It seems like it's a black spot. It seems like it's struggling. So we do see the sphere, but yes, it is having problems reflecting reflections. Kind of a meta thing. It's almost like it's painting it at the same time it's trying to do it. Oh, one thing I meant to show you is if you want to see what's going on under the hood here, you can come in here, and if we go to visualization under view mode, we can create a Lumen scene, and this kind of shows you what Unreal Engine is seeing as far as how it's getting its calculations for the bounce lighting and stuff. So that's called the Lumen scene, which is kind of a combination of stored meshes, distance filled meshes, and also cards, these things they call cards. And you can do kind of an overview of all this coming together. Just kind of gives you an idea of what's actually going on under the hood. So that's neat to take a look at that. So anyway, now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and enable our hardware ray tracing. And so we just have to search for hardware ray, and this is going to require a restart. So we just click that. And so we just got a couple of those settings. And there's one more setting that we have to set before we're going to do the restart. And we come back in here, this gentleman also explains which setting that is. And that is going to be not translucency, but there's another one. If we scroll down just a little bit further, I think it's just down here. It's the hit lighting for reflections. That's the other one that we want to, not the surface cache, but that will give us a better result. So we just got to search for hit lighting for reflection, and that pops up right there, and it's set to surface cache, and we'll just set it to hit lighting for reflection. The best look we can get with that, I guess, Lumen 2. So we got to go ahead and restart, and that just takes a second to redo, and we're back here. And let's take a look at these spheres now. We'll play and take a close look. Now, one of the first things I notice in coming up is that I actually see the first player's arms now. So before, the first person player just has arms, right? So I actually see the arms now. So honestly, it seems that for reflective surfaces that ray tracing is superior to Lumen. And of course it has to be available on your graphics card, if you have it. But if you don't, then you've got Lumen. And so I guess one way to think of it is that everybody becomes a vampire with Lumen. So, but it definitely seems like the reflective quality of surfaces is much improved. There, do you see the arms there now? The arms from the first So he's a partial vampire. So the takeaway is Lumen is perfectly great. It just doesn't seem to handle reflections very well, and so you probably want to enable hardware ray tracing for heavily reflective surfaces, especially mirrors and things like that. So anyway, I hope you found this helpful. Take care, have a great day, and I will talk to you next time. And that's going